Thank you all for joining us today. It is such a pleasure to see our illustrious alums back, and happy to speak to our great students, some of whom have joined us as well. My name is Eric Owens. I'm the director of the IS program, and it is always a pleasure to convene something like this where we learn about the ways in which our alumni have made their way in the world. Some of you are coming out of different years and you've been out for longer times than others, but the way that you have chosen a path of service for some portion of that postgraduate life is a testament to the centrality of ethics in our program and the commitment to the common good that makes not just the IS program special, but Boston College as a whole, as you all know quite well. And so I love that we're having this conversation. I know you're coming from all different walks of life and different modes of service. And so I've asked the alumni who joined us today, and there are many more who'd like to join us for these kinds of conversations as well. So we'll have more in the fall and spring. But I've asked our alumni to speak a little bit about their path after graduation, how they chose a year or two of service or more, how they've integrated that into their lives, and what they're up to right now. And then we'll kind of talk about big picture questions. We'll open for 20 minutes or so at least of questions from students along the way. So thanks again, everyone. I see Laura Statler's at my top left here, and she's in pole position on my screen. So why don't we have Laura start? Thanks so much.
As Eric said, my name is Laura, and I'm a 2018 Boston College grad. My senior year at BC, I was international studies major and philosophy major, and it had me feeling like all I thought about was big picture things and things that were far away. And so that led me to seeking an experience after I graduated that grounded me in what was going on in communities nearby in the United States. So I chose to do JVC in the United States. And so I was sent to Austin, Texas, and I worked at an organization on labor rights and workers' rights. And so that's a little of where I was in JVC, and where I am now is that work that I was doing in JVC created an interest in like low wage workers and workers' rights. And so now I work at a think tank in Washington, DC, focusing on workforce development and labor market issues.
Well, why don't you say a little bit more? We were trying to get a 5-minute intro here out of everyone, because otherwise we'll circle back to ask you more. Like, tell us more about your service at JVC and what it meant to you, and the challenges you faced, as well as the things you've gotten out of it in your current work.
Yeah, so one of Eric's questions that he prompted us with was advice, and things that I wish I had known going into JVC is I wish I had been a little bit more intentional about looking at what the program really wanted, where I think as a senior at BC, you're experiencing so much freedom and a lot of choice, where doing a program like JVC, you're signing up to go into a program that has expectations of you. And so some of those expectations with JVC were a commitment to simple living and a commitment to community. And when I started JVC, those two elements started to really challenge me in a way that I hadn't anticipated. And some of that is I was expected to have community night once a week and spirituality nights once a week with my housemates. And halfway through the year, it's like, is this actually what I want to be doing every week? Like, this just seems like a lot of time commitment. And so it was balancing of my individual wants of maybe wanting to stray away from some of those program commitments, but then also trying to be respectful of my housemates who they signed up for a program like this that was trying to be intentional about spirituality nights, community nights. So that was one point of advice that I would give anyone looking at doing a service year is there's so many programs out there. So just really align what you're seeking to get out of a service year with like your goals and your priorities. Another one that I can think of is if location is a really big concern for you, a program like JVC that it prides itself in like pushing its participants to expand where they are geographically, it might not be a good fit for you. So those are, I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give, is be really intentional about the service program that you look into, because there's so many out there. but I think the beauty of doing a service year, and I'm sure it's the same with like Peace Corps and Teach for America, is that it really challenges you and expands you. And in a lot of ways, what I was doing last year was far beyond what I could imagine doing my first year out of college. Like what I was called to do at my organization was just, I just grew so much. And I think that programs like JVC, they really rely on the energy of fresh college grads, and they are open to like their participants of growing so much in their placement, which I think I really benefited from.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Why don't we stay on JVC and move to someone who's done JVC International, which is a 2-year commitment instead of 1 typically. Susan, can you say a bit about your experience?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Susan Brusky, and I graduated from BC in 2011. I think I kind of started to feel an inkling pretty early on at BC that I wanted to do some service after graduation. So I applied to Peace Corps, JVC International, and a program in Ecuador called Rostro de Cristo. And through the application process for the 3, kind of determined that JVC International was kind of most in alignment with what I was hoping for and kind of my values, and yeah, kind of set a trajectory for the next couple years of my life. So I spent 2 years in Peru in a small town called Andoailias, which is about an hour outside of Cusco. And I did a lot of different things there, ran an after school lunch program for the children at the parish I worked at, taught English, kind of did the shopping for the lunch program, and kind of a whole bunch of other tasks. And I found the experience to be like really, I think it really shaped a lot of who I am and kind of how I decided I wanted to live my life and my career trajectory as well. I think, you know, I've been out of school, I think 9 years now, but I really do think that those 2 years in Peru were just so formational, and I like have valued them highly throughout the time since graduation. So yeah, so after I got back from Peru, I had a short stint of teaching theology at a Catholic high school in Chicago. And once that was over, I moved back to my home in Wisconsin, and I worked at a homeless shelter there for 2 years as a case manager, helping individuals find housing, get connected with food stamps, mental health care, substance abuse treatment, and things like that. During those years, I also ran a spirituality group for the men and women I was working with. And so kind of the combination of the case management and these spirituality groups led me to decide that I wanted to go back to grad school. And so I did the Master's of Social Work and a Master's of Theology and Ministry at Boston College. They do offer that dual master's degree program where you can do it in 3 years instead of 4. So I just graduated from there in last May, so about a year ago. And I am now working at a community health center in Framingham, Massachusetts, so about 30-40 minutes west of Boston. And there I work as a therapist, doing kind of both long-term therapy and kind of more short-term work with individuals in that community. So I work with a lot of undocumented individuals, people who aren't able to receive services elsewhere, and particularly struggle to find services in Spanish and Portuguese. So I really enjoy it. It has lots of challenges, but it's a good fit at this moment, and we'll see what happens next. So
Thank you. Do you have any quick words of advice or wisdom for folks who are interested in some of the paths that you've chosen, especially with regard to JVC International?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I think for me, as I was kind of both filling out my JVC international application, as well as the other applications for Peace Corps and for Rostro de Cristo, I think just going through those processes helped me figure out that I did want to live in community, that I think that was going to make my experience more meaningful to me. And maybe it just felt safer in that moment to have other volunteers around me. And I think it also helped me define for myself that I did want a 2-year commitment. That 1 year somehow just that wasn't what I was looking for. So I think, yeah, I think writing the essay questions was extremely helpful. And I don't know, I think JVC is big on their values, as Laura was saying, of simplicity and community, social justice, and spirituality. That's the other one. So I think I just realized that those were things that I wanted my life to be about. I wanted those to be values in my life, and I thought that JVC was a way to kind of help cement those further. So, yep.
Terrific. Thanks so much. So you were at JVC in Peru, you said, right? Sarah, there you go. I was going to turn it. Let's see. Oh, there we are. Perfect. Thanks, Sarah. I was going to turn it over to you because with the Latin American handoff here, Sarah has just been recalled from a 2-year Peace Corps placement in Colombia. And I think it would be good to hear about your experience with the Peace Corps.
Yeah, definitely. So let me know if you can't hear me because I'm on my phone now. But okay, great. So I, ever since high school, knew I wanted to work in some international capacity from my first AP, like international government class. It was always an interest of mine. So going to BC, I immediately applied for the international studies major. And even though I didn't know what direction I wanted to go within international work, whether that's the private sector, doing international business, or development work or nonprofit work, I didn't really know that going into it. But over my time at BC, the Jesuit values really dug in, and I realized, and it really became clear to me, that the work I want to do for the rest of my life has to be meaningful. So senior year, first semester, I didn't quite know what that looked like. I didn't have a job lined up. I saw all my friends getting jobs, and I felt like I was falling behind. So I went to a service fair, and a Peace Corps recruiter was there. So Peace Corps was something that I hadn't really thought about because I wanted to make a bigger difference. I wanted to work for like an NGO, like a big organization, so my impact could be larger. So I didn't think one person, one community can do a whole lot. So I was kind of avoiding Peace Corps, but right before the deadline, December deadline, I ended up applying, and I chose Colombia because I studied abroad in Argentina and I fell in love with Latin America. So for Peace Corps, now they've changed it quite a bit. You can choose a box that says send me anywhere, and Peace Corps will look at your resume and your qualifications, your experiences, and send you to a country that needs, where you could fit the need. Or you can apply directly to a program. So I applied directly to Colombia to an English teacher trainer position. So I got there in September of last year. I graduated May 2019. So September 2019, I left for Colombia, and I was on the coast for 3 months of training in a town outside of Barranquilla. And then in December, once we finished our technical and Spanish training, we were dispersed throughout the country, and I was a part of the first cohort to send volunteers to the interior region, so the Andean region, and I was in a department called Boyacá, which is kind of like the state next to where the capital is. So we were about 5 hours from Bogota. And it was just an incredible experience. I was only with my actual site for 3 months. I had 21 months to go before we all got pulled out, but the work that I started there, the connections I made, the experiences I had were just hands down the best decision for me, and I think a really good decision for anyone looking to go into international development, just because a lot of the advice I had while I was going through this kind of discernment process, if you will, first semester, senior year, was that if you want to go into international development, on the ground experience is really important, because they want you to see, or employers of these big, USAID, World Bank, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they want to see that you know what you're talking about and you're not just looking to go live in a foreign country because why not? So doing Peace Corps, it's super reputable and a lot of people know about it, and it's 2 years. So it shows like you're really committed to the experience. So yeah, that was kind of a tangent. But so what I was doing was I was an English teacher trainer. So this program I really liked because it was really focused on sustainability. So we weren't just going in and teaching English classes, but working with the teachers, the English teachers in the community to build their skills, to give them new ideas for teaching methodology, and improve their English. So like the English would continue to be stronger after we left. So that was our primary project. Most Peace Corps programs that you do will have the primary project. So they have a bunch of different sectors. So like there's the agriculture sector, the community economic development sector. I was English education sector, and there's, I think, maybe 7. So that's your primary project. And then your secondary project is something that you get to come up with in collaboration with your community. So I was only there for 3 months, but I started a girls empowerment club. I was going to do a program that did workshops for vulnerable young single mothers that lived in the rural area, just because that was a population that the mayor and I identified as a vulnerable group of people. So we were going to do a project there. My community also wanted to work on environmental projects. So all that being said is that Peace Corps, when you go, everything is dependent on your community. And if you go in with open eyes and open mind and just come in from the standpoint that you want to learn from them, the projects like fall into your lap. So if you are somebody who's willing to kind of go in any direction, like, you're great for Peace Corps. There's so many things I could say about Peace Corps. I mean, my short 6 months there was it's the best decision I've made for myself. And one point I wanted to make is that a lot of people get nervous about giving up 2 years of their lives before, jumping right into a job, or that maybe employers won't see Peace Corps as legitimate work or transferable skills. But the skills that I've gained in just 3 months there have been, so transferable. Cross-cultural communication, cross-cultural teamwork, project building, time management. I've had a couple interviews since I've been back, and Peace Corps come up in all of them and been the main talking point for almost all of them. So that was a lot. I can go on for hours.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. I
yeah,
know, because
sorry.
no, it's great. Because we want to hear about sort of the experiences inside the program as well as your takeaways. And
Totally.
I think it's very important. But briefly, Sarah, are you expecting then that your Peace Corps experience is over, or have they committed to sending you back in a year or something?
Yeah, so that's been tough, and that was something I wanted to talk about. So Peace Corps is still accepting applications. They're still looking to fill positions because they had to evacuate globally. So they've got a lot of they kind of had to backtrack a lot. So now they're looking to fill. I know. So 7,000 volunteers globally. So the budget was kind of shot. But they're going to start they say they're going to start sending people back in October, which is the end of the fiscal year, or after the end of the fiscal year. From the conversations I've had with my host family and members of my community is that Colombia has gone full shutdown. They can't leave their houses without getting a fine. It's aggressive, which has been good because it stopped the spread of the virus, and it already has, Colombia has a weaker healthcare system than we do. But all that being said, I don't see us going back before 2021 or before there's a vaccine, because it just doesn't make sense. But Peace Corps as a whole is very optimistic and haven't shut down any of their programs anywhere in the world. So.
Okay. Cool. That's helpful. Thanks. So while we're on the topic of Peace Corps, let's move to Carrie Ann, who served in the Peace Corps in Madagascar, right?
I was in
Mozambique.
Yeah.
You're in Mozambique. Sorry, that's right.
It's okay. We're neighbors.
Thanks for being here. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Professor Owen said, my name is Carrie. I was an IS major with an econ concentration, and I graduated from BC in 2017. Similar to Sarah, I wanted to work in international development. It's really hard to work in international development without development experience or experience in a developing country, I should say, because Peace Corps in itself is not necessarily development. And you need experience to get experience, blah, blah, blah. Hence, Peace Corps is a great option. I don't want to repeat anything that Sarah said. There are 6 sectors of Peace Corps: education, health, community economic development, youth development, agriculture, environment. The biggest one is education, especially I think with recent grads, because just having a college degree, sometimes you have to do like an online certification, but just having a college degree is usually enough in order to qualify for that position. I was also an education volunteer. I was a math teacher trainer, which is a little bit different. In Mozambique, they have schools that are, after you finish high school, it's kind of like a trade school that you can apply to and enroll in. And after the 3-year program, you're a certified primary school teacher. So you can work teaching grades 1 through 7, and that's how they fill that deficit of teachers. So Peace Corps volunteers don't work as primary school teachers because they don't need us. They have this program for it. But we work at those schools that train the teachers. So kind of like Sarah was saying, promoting sustainability, improving teaching methodologies for new teachers. So I worked at a teacher training school. I guess that's what you call it in English. And I taught math and math teaching methodologies. I knew that I wanted to do it out of BC. So I applied in December of my senior year, probably for the same deadline that Sarah did. And I left for Mozambique. I interviewed in February. That's the timeline. About 2 months after you apply, or within 2 months, you'll hear from them about what position they're offering you. I had put down a couple of countries. You get 3 choices that looked interesting to me, programs that looked interesting to me. But my third option, I put send me anywhere. I really wanted to go. I wanted to be in the Peace Corps. I didn't know a lot about the world, so it's hard to make a judgment of like whether Bolivia is going to be better for me than Morocco. So I just really wanted to go. I wanted the on the ground experience. And Mozambique was not one that I had chosen, but it was offered to me and I said yes. I interviewed for it and I got in. So in August of 2017, I left for Peace Corps. Like Sarah said, you do 3 months of training, mostly language training and cross-cultural training. Official language in Mozambique is Portuguese. So I learned Portuguese in 3 months, and then I had to teach in Portuguese for the rest of my 2 years there. So in addition to being a math teacher trainer, like Sarah was saying, that's our primary project, our primary job title. I worked in a lot of other projects in my community. Most people don't know the geography of Mozambique, so I feel like it's kind of pointless to talk about it, but I lived in between the 2 cyclones. So I was not affected by either one, although most Peace Corps volunteers in Moz were, but basically north central of the country, near Nampula, which is the biggest city in the north. So like I said, it was a bit of a bigger town. That we had this after school academic program that a Mozambican member of my community who had studied abroad in the States and came back was trying to improve academic competencies of the students in my town. So he started this after school program, and I was one of 4 Peace Corps volunteers in my town. That's how big it was, which is not normal. Sometimes you're the only one there. But I was one of 4, and all 4 of us ended up working at the center, mostly doing English teaching, but also math, and using that group of really motivated students for other youth development projects, like participating in English theater, which is one of the big secondary projects in Mozambique, because we found that working with theater as a means to improve English and improve communication skills, as well as talking about social issues. So like the theme of this year's English theater competition was child marriage. They had to write a 10-minute skit about child marriage in their town and perform it all in English. So projects like that kind of put together academic competency, social issues, health issues, really popular. I also did some work in grant and financial management for some of these projects, which is a really good hard skill to have, that I have managed a US government grant, which sounds really big, but like so many people do it, and it's really much more tangible to get those kinds of on the ground experience from Peace Corps. I feel like I'm talking too much. I finished in September. Am I talking too much, Professor Owens?
You're good. You can wrap up, and then
Okay.
we'll head out to. But make sure you get out what you're looking for, and we'll circle back. Yeah.
So I finished in September of 2019, a couple months earlier than I was supposed to because of visa issues. not because of any other issues, but considered fully finishing my Peace Corps experience. Um, like Sarah was saying, 2 years seems like a long time, but you really need 2 years in order to like concretely finish things. You know, you do a lot in your first year, mostly I think with your primary project, and you get a lot of ideas and you start a lot of things, and like 60% of them fail, and that 40% really need that second year to kind of have a better understanding of the community and the needs and just the whole space that you're working within. So I think 2 years is absolutely necessary. And you know, your world will wait for you. Coming back, I came back to the States in November and like picked up the same job that I had before I left. Um, my family, it's like no time has passed. My friends, it's like no time has passed. I was in Boston in December visiting people, and it's, you know, you, especially now with technology, imagine if you were doing this when the Peace Corps started in the 70s or the 60s. And all you could do is write letters, and you literally said goodbye to people for 2 years. I was WhatsApp calling my mom like every day. So the world is a really connected place. My birthday was yesterday, and like half of my friends from Mozambique are all writing on my wall, like, happy birthday, professor. Like, it's a very connected world that we live in, and we're really fortunate to do that. So I wouldn't put the 2 years as a hindrance. It's a really important experience, especially if you do want to work in the international scope. Anyway, so I got back in November. I've been applying to grad schools. I'm actually going to start grad school in September at the Kennedy School at Harvard, so I'm moving back to Boston. And that's another really great perk of Peace Corps. Not only does it look really good, like Sarah was saying in the interviews, it's a really like foundational experience, but there's a lot of grad schools that partner with Peace Corps to provide different scholarships, and it's different for every school. They're normally called Coverdell fellowships, the programs that work with Peace Corps. And if you look on Peace Corps' website, you can find like every university that has any sort of joint program. I have a scholarship to Harvard that's not related to Peace Corps. It's related to public service, which is sort of related to Peace Corps. But a lot of schools just in general, depending on what you're going for your master's for, I'm getting my master's in public policy, really appreciate that commitment to service that you make through any of these service programs. That really stands out as a leadership and commitment, and can really help you in the future.
Thanks so much, Carrie. I really appreciate it. That's terrific. One of the common themes we're seeing around, well, not just here in our panel, but elsewhere, that teaching is a big part, is a very common way for students to enact service. And whether it's through Teach for America or AmeriCorps or some other programs like the one that Matthew has done, that I'm looking forward to hearing about as well, are really crucial transitions and starting points for people's careers after BC. So Matthew, could you talk a bit about your experience as a teacher post-grad?
Yeah, happy to. So hi everyone, my name is Matthew Hilton. Graduated from BC in 2009. I was an IS major with a poli-sci focus, and coming out of school in 2009, I can somewhat relate to some of the economics instability that we're seeing today in terms of the recession that we were going through. And so whether it was through that or commitment to service, it was just always a natural pull for me to want to spend 1 to 2 years in some sort of service capacity. I had looked at JVC and TFA as well. And then through family friends was notified of the Alliance for Catholic Education program, which is run through the University of Notre Dame. Putting aside football rivalries for the moment, it was absolutely the right fit for me. So the ACE program is a 2-year service through teaching program. It is targeting kind of underserved, under-resourced Catholic schools. So that's where you're going to see the difference between TFA and the ACE program, is targeting Catholic education. In that 2 years, you are spending 2 summers, at Notre Dame, learning how to be a teacher over the course of 8 weeks before you are placed in your given city to teach in your own classroom. This is your own world for that 2-year sprint. ACE has kind of 3 big pillars to it. There's the teaching component, that's a primary one. Community, which is I think, an incredibly helpful asset to the program in that you are living in community with fellow teachers, typically from 4 to 7 fellow teachers in your city. And that just provides kind of a natural level of support that you need when you're going through your initial years as a teacher. And then spirituality as well, which, not surprisingly, coming from a Catholic university and serving in Catholic schools is a big tenet to the program. So those are your 3 big pillars. I was placed in a middle school in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is about as southeast as you can go in Texas before running out of room in the US. So Bishop Garriga Middle Preparatory School, got the call. I taught 6th through 8th grade social studies, as well as dabbling in a few other areas where, as a teacher, you show up and then it's pretty amazing how quickly they find additional pieces for you to do. So if you're interested in branching out and finding coaching or teaching an extracurricular activity, it'll find its way to you. So taught for the 2 years in Corpus, and then again 2 summers at Notre Dame. While you are teaching, you are simultaneously earning your master's degree from Notre Dame, your master's in education, which is absolutely a huge point to the program. So you're not only getting real experience in the classroom, which will teach you a whole lot real quick. You're also kind of developing these professional credentials that are going to help you, whether you want to continue in the education field or not. Typically, your cohort size is about 90 folks in your given class, about 50-50 Notre Dame versus non-Notre Dame students. So that's a reality of life that's fun to deal with, but let me tell you, it sharpens your BC pride really quickly. And I had 4 or 5 fellow BC alums with me, and that was a big deal. So it's a fantastic opportunity to quickly move away from a focus on yourself in college to quickly pivot and look at the needs of others as you get 100 students who are now looking to you for guidance. And there is no better way to sharpen your ability, your agility, your flexibility, how to think through challenging situations than being in front of those students that you have. You have an opportunity to, for me, it was middle school. That was the right age group for me, but you also have elementary education, K through 5, as well as high school as well. And then the last thing I'll say before kind of wrapping up is it is a 2-year program, 2-year commitment, which is the right amount of time. You obviously need to have that continued commitment to your classroom. After ACE, you see a really wide range of where people go with following that program. You not surprisingly see a lot of people who continue on in education, including myself. I continued for another 3 years teaching before moving on. But you will also see a lot of fellow graduates who continue on to graduate school. It's a really wide range of where people kind of take their interests post-graduate school or post-ACE. So definitely opened a lot of doors, a lot of interesting conversations, and an experience that I absolutely would not trade.
Thanks so much, Matthew. It's really great to hear about the program. I think it's less well known than Teach for America because of just the size and scope of TFA, and it's really important to highlight other programs that have similar impact, but are more based on religion or spirituality in some cases. But also the link with the graduate degree is really terrific. So thank you all for this. I'd like to open to see if any students would like to ask questions first before we have shift into other parts of the conversation. Anybody like to jump in with a question? Yeah, go ahead, Blake.
I'm just curious on how all y'all's programs were financed. Like, did you receive room and board, or did you have to fundraise on your own? Were your flights paid for? All of that.
Yeah, really important question. Thank you. Anybody jump in as you
Yeah,
wish.
I can speak to Peace Corps. So the majority of the program is financed. You get a monthly stipend to cover food and other living allowances, and it's calculated and recalculated every year by the volunteers based on the actual amount that you would spend on the ground. I never had any problem sticking to that. Housing is covered, either some provided by the school, otherwise Peace Corps will find you a house and pay the rent for you. Flights to and from your country at the beginning of 2 years and at the end are covered. Any vacations you take in the middle are up to you. And also for every month that you serve, you're accruing what we call readjustment allowance. It's supposed to be so that when you start back in the States, you have a lump sum of money to like pay your first month of rent or something while you're looking for a job. They increased it while I was there. I think it's $425 a month now, before taxes. And you won't get that until you finish, whether you, finish the full 2 years, or if you were evacuated early at the end of that time, you get that amount. But the biggest thing that isn't covered is pre-service medical costs. There's a huge process of medical clearance where you have to get a bunch of vaccines, you have to get a bunch of tests, and it's like 12 forms that you have to fill out. It took me months. Like the BC nurses knew when I was coming in. And all of those costs you have to cover yourself. But once you get into Peace Corps, once you arrive in your country of service, all of the medical costs are covered, which is actually really nice. So any problems that you have there are covered. And when you finish Peace Corps, you get a month of insurance as well. I think that's everything.
That's super helpful. Thank you. How about the others? Laura?
I can speak on JVC. That's a great question, Blake. So similar to Peace Corps, a lot of costs are covered through JVC. So you start your time in JVC at an orientation, a nationwide orientation, and costs are covered to getting there. And then they're also covered for getting to your actual placement site. And then when you're at your placement site, so mine was in Austin, Texas, and a cool thing about JVC is that it does have a rich history in the United States, and so a lot of the houses and places that you live get passed down from community to community. So I moved into a house that we didn't have to pay rent for. JVC covered the cost of that. The part of the program of like simplicity is each person in your house, so I lived with 4 people, we each got $90 a month for food and for household items. And so we'd pool that money together. So that $360 was our monthly budget for food and household items. But then JVC also gave each individual person $100 for personal spending each month. There were also options of getting on the JVC health insurance, which was a great option. And then some of the JVC placements that have an educational and teaching component, they qualify for AmeriCorps. And with AmeriCorps, you get some of that funding and tuition funding for a future use. And so they would get some of that. And then lastly, JVC did provide coverage for my transportation back to like where I wanted to be after the program ended.
Anyone else want to talk about finances in your program?
Yeah, from the ACE front, I'll have a few comments. I think the first, probably most important point is that, at no point was I paying tuition to Notre Dame. That was all covered. Granted, you're giving your blood, sweat, and tears and energy and all of that goodness in the classroom for that degree. But I believe that is due to the relationship with the AmeriCorps program that may have updated a little bit since the time that I was in ACE, which is getting further and further away in 2011 now. For finances generally, though, each ACER is paid a monthly stipend that will flex a little bit based on where you are placed. The majority of the ACE program placements are in like the southern half of the United States. So a little lower cost of living. My placement in Corpus Christi would be different than, say, someone placed in Los Angeles. So, your stipend was, $900 to $1,200 a month, give or take. And I'm sure that's slightly updated since I've gotten out, but that has been consistent. In terms of housing, as I mentioned, you do live in community and you pay a small fee associated with living in the house that they have assigned for you. Travel in and out, I don't think was covered. You might get a little mileage bump or mileage bonus in case you are driving to your site, but I don't remember that being particularly substantial for where we were.
Great question. Are there any other questions from students while we're thinking? We can, obviously, you can always raise your hand along the way. Okay, well, let us know if you do. Blake, you got another question? Go for it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, well, I recognize that most of these programs, like, you need a 1 or 2 year commitment. I'm curious just like what the weekly commitment is. Are you just on all the time, or do you have just like a day or two where you can really take your own time and go and work on perfecting yourself? Because that, for me, that's really important. I'm looking for a program where I'm not on 24/7, where I can still go and be my own person for a bit.
Good. Anybody can jump in on that.
I could probably talk a little bit on that. Teaching is an interesting option there, because you look at the school bell hours and you're like, yeah, cool, I'm on from 8 until 3. And then you start to think about, well, what is the lesson planning that goes into that? And what is the grading that goes on top of that? And what kind of after school meetings do I have? And hey, do I want to catch a CYO basketball game, which is at night, and you're going to want to do, because those are the fun parts of actually teaching and building relationships with your students outside of the classroom. So I think in any service program, you're going to have to be willing to give a significant amount of your time. That being said, we found pockets to go and have fun and to blow off steam. You can't be on all of the time. One of the things that I really liked about ACE is there were often like communities within relatively close range. So we had one in San Antonio that was only a couple hours away, Brownsville and Mission, so they were a couple hours away. So did a good job of like taking weekends off and visiting other communities. Sometimes the community nature of these programs can get a little claustrophobic. I am a bit of an introvert. I like to have time on my own. And so it's a bit of a balance. Like, I think it's good that ACE kind of forced me out of my shell at times to say, all right, I am part of this broader community. What do I need to give and contribute to this community to make it kind of the best possible place? And there are also times where I had to pull back and say, okay, I need to take a drive. I'm on my own for this part. I need to go lock myself away and play Xbox for a couple of hours, because you know what, I've had enough fun for the time being, and I just need a little mental break. So you're on more than you think with any of these programs, I'm sure. But if you don't build in time for yourself, you're going to get burned out pretty quickly.
Thanks. Does someone else want to jump in on this? This is a big question for any sort of, I don't know, we're calling this service today, but there's a catch-all term, but for any sort of mission-driven work that people do, it's absorbing. And for work that is not mission-driven can be absorbing also. And so this falls both under what are the unique conditions under which service organizations make demands on us, and then what are the moral commitments that we feel in addition to those, and then what are our general problems with work-life balance that we bring with us from college or from work or whatever, and they're all wrapped into one. And I think it's, you know, I welcome reflections from everybody on how you tried to balance that. There's some structural constraints, you know, if you're living in community, you're not going to have your own apartment, and et cetera. Or if you're a place 7,000 or 15,000 miles away from home, you're not going to swing by and see your folks and have lunch and have that family reconnect time. But I'd love to hear more about how different individuals made that balance or adapted to that.
I can speak to the Peace Corps side of things, at least in my experience. So something going into it during training, they really made sure that we recognize is that we are, yes, Peace Corps volunteers fulfilling a certain professional role like a teacher, but we're also representatives of the US. So you do have to be like diligent of the fact that there are eyes on you 24/7. So I was the only American the only foreigner in my small town, and that was one of the most exhausting parts, is that you always felt like you had to put on this very professional, not mask, it wasn't a mask by any means, but this professional aura, if you will. And I think part of that was it was my first 3 months there, so I was still getting to know everyone, and I had to make sure they recognized me as a professional, not just as a young American who came to their town to visit. And so the other side of this is that depending on the country, you'll either there's a strong chance you'll live with host family. So in Colombia, everyone has to live with a host family. You can't live alone. So even when you're in your own home, you feel like you're still kind of on, because you're always having conversations. People are always asking you questions, and in your space, especially I've found with the Latin American culture, they're very not intrusive, but they want to know everything, and like knocking on the door isn't really a thing. So it definitely gets exhausting, but for me, my escape was going on walks. I lived in the mountains, and I was able to go on walks to the river. I was able to go on hikes every day, and that was kind of like my hour to get away, and people understood that. So it's just however you choose to process it, whether it's you bring a guitar and you like play a song and sing, you journal, you read. You definitely have to take that time for yourself, because if you don't, it 100% can be overwhelming. So it's just knowing how to self-manage is really important.
Yeah, just piggybacking off of that, volunteers in Mozambique don't live with host families. It does really depend on the country of service, and that's maybe a good question when you're considering if you're going to apply directly to a country is, do you want a host family experience, or do you want an experience living maybe by yourself or with another Peace Corps volunteer? So I had a roommate for 1 year from Peace Corps. In my second year, I was alone. Both were very formative experiences for me. But I know so many volunteers who have studied for the MCAT, studied for the LSAT, applied to grad school, applied to medical school, just taken online courses, have made time for self-improvement. And it's a hard balance at first, because like Sarah was saying, so much of our job is just being in the community and having people get to know who we are and getting to know the community so that you can better understand its needs and do your job. But you don't have to be on all the time. If you're having a really bad day, you can shut your door, and if people knock, you don't answer. Like the best way of doing it is kind of establishing boundaries. Like if your door is open, people can come and approach you. If your door is closed, like you're sick, you don't want to be touched, you don't want to be talked to. So, you know, it's hard to necessarily say like, oh, every Saturday will be for myself, because like something will happen on a Saturday and you'll really want to participate, or someone will show up at your door with like a great opportunity. But it can definitely be done. And another thing we haven't really talked about is vacation time. But Peace Corps allows for you to be away from your site 2 weekends a month, plus you get 2 days of vacation time accrued every month that you're serving. So that's enough time for you to like go see your friend on the other side of the country, or visit home, or have your family come visit, or if you just need to like go to the nearest city and like sit in a hotel lobby and drink coffee that other people made in air conditioning, like any of those kind of things that you need to do, go to a real supermarket. You have time for that. So it really is about a personal balance. If you want to be in the community 24/7, you totally can. But if you're having a bad day, that's also okay. You just tell people you're sick.
I do think, like, regardless of what service program somebody does, you're ultimately giving up like a little bit of control of your life, right? Like you're allowing somebody else to like make certain decisions for you. And I think, and like, so some of our preferences aren't always going to be honored, like, you know, for introverts or extroverts and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's like a good crash course and like learning to prioritize like self-care and like figuring out those balances. And, you know, I definitely got the balance wrong sometimes and had to like self-correct. And I think, you know, also when we're taken out of our comfort zones, whether it's like with our family or friends, or our go-to like things we do to feel good. You know, if we're in the US or whatnot, I think we have to, we can like find new parts of ourselves and like learn how to adapt. So yeah, I would just want, yeah, it is so important, but I think it's a really great opportunity to learn new parts of yourself and to like grow in that way. So.
And I'll offer kind of a national perspective where going into JVC in Austin, Texas, I was not anticipating like a culture shock, but I was met with a culture shock because it's not Boston College. And I worked as a paralegal, and most of my clients were Spanish speaking. So that was like a big learning curve for me, was learning Spanish and learning labor terms in Spanish. But going more to your question, Blake, that was one thing that attracted me to JVC, is that they were really clear about the different types of jobs that you could have and service placements. And I knew I was interested in law school. And so I was able to select like a legal placement. And I knew that with that would come a more structured work-life balance, where it's going to be a more 9-to-5 experience, where some of my housemates, they selected to have a more direct service responsibility. And so some of them would be like working on the weekends, which was just not an experience that I had, because I was very intentional about, I want to be in like doing legal services, and I was able to structure my placement to like have that 9-to-5 feel. So that kind of goes to balance as well, of like a pro of like JVC is being able to like be really intentional about what type of placement you select.
I think in all of the other alumni panels that I'm doing over the next 2 weeks, we talk a little bit about integrating values and work. And I think in this group, I think it's the most evident that people are choosing to find a particular balance of values and work that comes into that. And I think we've heard a lot about that today. I'm hoping that, of course, we could talk for hours about all these different things. I'm hoping though, as we move toward the end of our conversation, that we might finish up by talking about what it is at Boston College that you feel like was most useful or directive for you, because it'll be students who are primarily watching this. And for those who are younger than seniors, you know, what would you encourage them to do, or to experiences to gather, or classes to take, or something like that, that would be a good preparation for you, not just to be accepted into the program, to, you know, to have the credentials to go, but also to prepare yourself intellectually, spiritually, personally for this kind of experience. Sarah, why don't you start it? Oh, did somebody start? Susan, did you start? Go ahead. Good, Susan, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I definitely took advantage of, and I'm assuming it still exists, of like advanced study grants that are offered, and was able to go to Ecuador during a summer of while I was in college. I think that really helped me to determine whether or not I wanted to do international service, and also provided the funding for that. And I think it also helped me get into the programs I was wanting to get into, showing these different volunteer organizations that I already had extended experience. And then I think, you know, I tried to like push myself in my comfort zones at BC in terms of getting involved with service and like with For Boston and Pulse and, you know, all the different programs, and to just get exposure to new people and to learn more. So I think, I don't know, I think the more we're able to like expand our experiences with different people and whatnot, that's important. All of these service programs are going to push our boundaries. All of us are going to make us grow in ways we're not imagining. So I think it's good to start that now and while you're in school.
Really helpful, thanks. Others?
I can follow on that. I think my answer would be twofold, kind of what Susan said. Pushing yourself to be in a situation that makes you uncomfortable is, I think, going to be across the board an experience you feel, whether you do international service or service in the US, just because that's kind of what you're doing, is putting yourself into a totally new situation. So doing the programs like Arupe or For Boston, where you're going into new communities and kind of experiencing that discomfort is really, really important, because without a doubt, you'll experience that during service. And I think the other thing is take a class where you're able to listen to others and then reflect on what they're saying. So for me, a class that was super, super important, I took it second semester senior year, was Faith, Service, and Solidarity with Steve Pope. And that just gave everyone in the class a chance to ask questions about their faith and about service and what it means to live in solidarity. And it was a huge pushing point for my kind of, I had already committed to Peace Corps, but really like confirming that, okay, this was the right choice for me, because it allowed me to really listen to others. And I think listening to others in community is going to be something that you're going to do in your service, no matter what you're doing and where you go, but also listening to yourself and figuring out what direction you want to go in life. And I got that out of that class. So that's definitely one recommendation I would have.
Thank you.
I can go next because I have to sign off at 4 for a meeting. But one thing that I think Boston College is great at is the role of mentorship. And I think that at BC, I just like learned so much of like how, when I put myself in a new situation, always be looking for people that can help better myself. And so that's the biggest thing that I got from JBC, is that I made the most of trying to meet as many people as I could and find a mentor. And some of the mentors I made at JBC are still mentors I have a year later. And I think that's a great thing of BC, and why you still can find a mentor at BC, because you have so much to learn from the great people in the community. And with that, I say goodbye.
Thanks so much, Laura. We appreciate you being here.
Bye.
Bye. Anybody else want to speak to that before we close?
Just really quickly, I'd echo a lot of the same comments. Search for that diversity of experience, whether it is in classes or in programs, because you never quite know what's going to hit that nerve or that passion point that will take you in the direction that you're going to go, whether it is one of these service programs or some other avenue. For me, it was kind of tutoring in Fort Boston that spurs my interest in teaching, and I'm off and running. So take advantage. That's just so critical to me, is take advantage of the many offerings that come from being a student at BC. Go to the lectures, like put yourself out there, try the programs. You don't get many shots to do it. So take advantage of that. And then the only other thing I'd add on top is be intentional and be thoughtful about why you are doing something. Don't let yourself get to kind of the end of things and be caught off guard with, oh man, what am I doing next? Be intentional and be thoughtful about where you want to go. People are not going to form your career. I've learned that pretty quickly. You are the one who will be making the choices that are going to take you places. So the more you can be intentional about it, the stronger it's going to be.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I had promised, thanks Blake, you're keeping us honest here. I had promised that we had asked you guys when the application deadlines were. Can you just in 10 seconds or less tell us about the application timeline for each program? Carrie Ann, do you want to do Peace Corps first?
Sure. There are Peace Corps openings right now that are due, the application is due July 1st, a no by date September 1st, and they leave by January. And Sarah was saying current volunteers who were evacuated are looking to go back in about October, but for new volunteers, we're looking at leaving in January, apply by July 1st.
Any other comments, Sarah, about the Peace Corps timeline?
The only thing I would say is there's a good chance you won't hear a lot. So just because they're really spread thin, so don't take that as you weren't accepted, and just be patient. And if anyone wants resume reviews or intention, you have to write like a letter of intention. I'm more than happy to help. So any students you have, send my way.
Each of these panels will list the speakers and their email addresses, so when people watch them, you'll be able to contact them. All of the people I think here have already agreed to be on Eagle Exchange also, which has a video conferencing component to it, and you can connect with them as well. Susan or Matthew, do you have deadlines that you can mention about JVC International and ACE? Matthew, while you're offline, yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, for ACE, applications for this upcoming year are already closed, but if you are looking at the following year, typically next January is when you would want to have your application in by. So January 2021.
Okay, thanks. Susan?
For JVC International, I believe it's also January deadline, so I think it's closed for the international program. Domestic, I'm not sure, currently up to date on the current situation, but I think it's typically through the spring, so it's still, they still might have some openings.
We have a very robust alumni network with service programs in the International Studies program. And in fact, the IS program sends students out to a year or two of service post-graduation at something like 4 times the rate of the BC community at large. It's something we're quite proud of. BC students also get fellowships at about 6 times the rate of the average BC student in terms of Fulbrights, Marshalls, Borens, things like that. So we have a lot of knowledge in our alumni group and a lot of talent, of course, within our current student body as well. And I'm going to work hard to bring those together to inform one another and keep those networks going. But in the next academic year, we'll make sure that we're doing IS-focused meetings on campus or online to continue this connection as well. So that's really important. Let me close and just say thank you all to the alumni who are here today for taking the time out today to talk with students, but also our communications beforehand, and most importantly, ongoing, for being open to working with our students and hopefully connecting with other alumni as well along the way. We are really proud of you. You are evidence of the the ethical core of our program, as well as the interdisciplinary strength of a program like ours that lets people choose so many different paths in life and to be reflective about it along the way. So we're proud of you, and we appreciate your input, and we will continue these alumni conversations in the coming months, and I'll let you know when this one's posted online. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the students for coming today as well. Take care of yourselves, and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
y'all. Thank you, Eric, for organizing.